Well, hello, good morning to you. Welcome to Tottenham Hotspur, USA. I am DJ Paul. Thank you for joining. Thank you for hanging out with me for whatever time I am going to get into the mud of what's going on at Tottenham right now. And so let's take a look at the transfer window, since that is what is up on us in this iteration of Tottenham in review. So just looking back at everything that transpired throughout the year, moving from Daniel Levy leaving to the window itself, I thought, and I've said that on several occasions, that Daniel Levy has his fingers all over this that transfer window. All the backroom staff, from Charrington to Vinay to Paratici, Lange, and also Mackenzie, everything that you see there is all Daniel Levy. And so what has changed now that Daniel Levy has left the club? I don't know under what circumstances, what are the deals. One of the things that I know, which is a fact, is that Daniel Levy owns almost a third of the shares in Tottenham Hotspur. So there are no news to report there. We are not news makers or breakers. We are just opining on the things that other journalists goes out and do. Journalists go out and do. So I am not going to try to convince you that I know anything more than what I am about to tell you, but my opinion based on what I'm seeing with my own eyes. I am not here to convince you that you should believe me, but hopefully whatever information and from my point of view, you will see a little bit clearly based on things that you may have picked up elsewhere. And so I try to make sure that even while giving my opinion, it is based in some facts. Now, once Daniel Levy left, again, I'm saying I don't know the circumstances, but what we're trying to do here for most people is that they're distancing themselves from Daniel Levy. They're trying to distance Daniel Levy from the club. You can't do that in the immediate. Daniel Levy, as it is, has affected effectively everything that happened with this current squad, except for obviously selling Brennan Johnson, bringing in the kid from Santos, and also Conor Gallagher. Everything else has to do with Daniel Levy, like I said, including the backroom staff from Lange all the way down to Mackenzie, Charrington, and the old works. I don't know if Daniel Levy was only carrying the envelope for the ENIC group. I don't know that. I know that behind being the executive chairman, for 24 years, he was also the managing director of the board of directors. Those are some really big hats in terms of what Daniel Levy held at the club. I don't know if all of that, that when he left, that it was football by itself. I did not dig deep enough to tell you that I know that Daniel Levy is no longer in the day-to-day operations, or is just off to the side, giving his views as to what needs to get done. But what we can see from all of that is that nothing in terms of what was the plan has manifested itself, that Daniel Levy is out the picture. The talk that we have won a Europa and now it's time to kick on and show that we are a serious club and we need to start investing to winning things. How soon has that changed? That we have not seen the investment. We were told right after Levy went through the door that there was $100 million to be invested into the club. Was it for the club or was it for the football? Were we taking care of debts that were there already? So therefore, $100 million that were purported to be going towards football wasn't really so. Have they used that $100 million to satisfy things that were already on the books? There was one report that I read that intimated that that's part of it, and it was up to about $39 to $40 million. There was another saying that part of that $100 million was to clear money that was used to buy Simmons. That's all out there unverified as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if it was a true journalist, but that's something that jumped out at me when I read the article, and so I'm not going to tell you here that's a fact. I don't know that, and I'm not going to sit here, like I said, and tell you things I don't know. My opinion, based on everything that's happened, is that nothing has really changed, because the same people who were directing Daniel Levy are still directing the lot that has been left behind him. I don't see the changes in the recruiting. I don't see the quality and the timeliness of anything that we have done so far. We are 22 days in the window and we have nothing to report. The players are dropping like flies, but we're blaming Frank. We can talk about Frank's tactics and everything else that he's doing, but we refuse to talk about the fact that 22 days has passed and we have injuries that we knew coming out of camp when we closed the window in September that has not been addressed. Simons, became a band-aid for Madison. Kulusevski wasn't addressed because we're going to move Kulusevski inside as well, and we're missing a playmaker inside after we bought Kudus, which was good business because we started early and everything else went to mush after that. That was kind of typical Spurs. Daniel Levy was still here, and now we're at the point now where we do the same thing. You see a pattern here that we sold Johnson and we haven't brought back anyone in. Forget that Kudus got injured. The fact that Johnson was going through the door when we did not have a bona fide left winger. Odegaard is not ready. Tell was not ready. They just weren't cutting. We just think that in the thinking of everyone, they were saying, hey, we don't have to go out and get a left winger, in my opinion, because we have Tell and Odegaard who can play there. So therefore, let's get rid of Johnson, who became the excess. And I can think that way because that's exactly how it is playing out. We can go out there and get a Kolo Muani because Kolo Muani can play over there. So in fact, we have the numbers, but the numbers does not add up to quality. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So I can give them that they can look at it and say, look, we have enough. But what does that number equates to? Lack of quality in Tell, lack of quality in Odegaard, lack of quality in Muani. We didn't know that Muani was going to turn out the way he is. Richarlison, who for some reason seemed to be the pivotal man in the middle once Solanke went down, I don't think he's cutting the mustard after how many years. Richarlison definitely needs to go. So even from that perspective, and looking for someone to cover for Solanke, Solanke is the man right now, whether or not you want to like Solanke. He's a striker and he has striker's instinct and he will do things different from everyone else that we have. He might not be as prolific as you want him to be based on how we got him from Bournemouth. But that's beside the point. The fact of the matter is that Richarlison is not good enough and should never have come into this window. Richarlison should have gone in 2 windows ago, but we still have Richarlison here as our striker. And so when you're looking at it and you look at what they're doing, who are you going to blame for what's happening here? You can't blame Frank because Frank has been saddled with misfits. And so if you want to play a certain way and you have misfits and player cannot do the things that you want them to do, that's exactly what's going to happen. We talk about players holding up the ball. Tony never used to hold up the ball. Wissa never used to hold up the ball. When Buemo never used to hold up the ball for Frank. So if we have Richarlison and we're asking Richarlison to hold up the ball in Frank's offense, then that cannot be Frank's offense because it was all about perpetual movements when it come on to Frank. Right, Wissa was coming from deep because Frank plays deep, on the counter. He plays defense first, and if we know Frank and know what Frank wanted to do, he wants to stop you from scoring, and then he's going to get out on the run. We saw that how fast his score goes, and he was scoring goals, and Brentford still carried that kind of threat even with Andrews taking over. But just looking at the entire squad and what we're doing right now, we are not supplying the manager with what he actually needs based on what we left from the window with. And so we are stuck in this. So who gets the blame? Frank gets the blame. Does Frank sometimes, brought some of this on him? Yes, he does. But at the same time, you have to look at a man who is trying to find his best 11. I would think after maybe 15 games or so, then a manager should say, you know what? It's not working, let's do this. And then give a clear cut and a clear understanding of what supposed to be. The thing with it is that a manager can use in inferior players, but let his system, which is superior, works for him. And then you could look to see directly that it is not his system that is not working. It's the players does not fit the system that he's using. And to some degree, agree. Frank doesn't exhibit that. I can understand the enormity of coming to a big club, and yes, we are a big club, and we need to start acting that way. I am not going to debate whether we're a big club or a small club or in between club. We are a big club. That's the end of the story. I'm not going to get into that debate. It is not worth my time getting into that. But what I'm saying is that when we ask for Levy to go and Levy go, my question from my last video was what's next? And this is the question I'm trying to answer here. What's next? What are we doing? We had 120 days to at least make an attempt at the players that we want. We don't see that kind of synergy with who is there. We heard about this two-man director of football, which was just a big pile of crap that it worked out to be, and now Paratici is gone, and he's going to take whatever he has with him. The club is asking him to stay on to see through January window. But what is it that Paratici is doing now that Lange and someone else coming in could not have done? Because we have not produced two players of anything to help the team. So what is his contributions if it was so important to keep him on? And we need to look at that and see that we are right now a club, a rudderless ship out there at sea in the storm. We don't know what direction we're going. So while we had someone to blame before, we're looking right now for some form of leadership. We could anchor down, and say, well, everything here was all Daniel Levy. And like I said on other videos, I don't know who was handing off the envelope to Daniel Levy and said, this is what we want. What I do know is that with the presence of Daniel Levy, Tottenham is a very profitable club. And therefore, when Levy was delivering profit, it was all good and well. And at the minute they taste a little success, it's time to kick Daniel Levy to the curb. So now that you do that, and for those who are asking for Levy to go, I'm going to join that with you, because as long as it remains football and Daniel Levy was not delivering football, then it's time for him to go. I didn't see Daniel Levy as a football man, and therefore when we start talking about football and he's not delivering football, and from that perspective he needed to go, and he's gone. Now that he's gone, and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, so where do we go from here? What direction are we going? Are we looking to Charrington for leadership? Are we looking for Lange for leadership? Are we looking to his subordinates, like Mackenzie? What's happening in the scouting department? Is Johan Lang the man that you look at and you said, in the mold of the club, this is exactly what it's supposed to look like under the director of football leadership? These are the players that are coming in. We don't know whether the players are coming and going, because we need a ball player. And while I like Conor Gallagher, in my opinion, wasn't a man for now. The man for now would have been, to go out there and beat the bushes and get a midfielder, a central midfielder, an attacking midfielder, a ball-playing midfielder, which Conor Gallagher is not that. Is he a good player? Yes, you want a bulldog like him in there. Pardon me, especially now with Palinia, carrying a knock, and Gallagher can be versatile and he can fit in there. Should Bissouma be anywhere near Tottenham with his behavior and all of that? No, he should have been long gone. Benton Kerr, the same thing. I don't know why we re-signed Benton Kerr. So if we wanted to build and we don't see that coming from Lange, where he was molding the club, what is Vinay's role in all of this, who I consider to be the most experienced football man? So right now we just look like we're at sea. We don't know whether we're going or coming. Like I said, we had 120 days to figure out that we needed at least 4 players, and no one that came in fit what we needed. Even though we brought in Santos, and just put it in context that a fit Udogie, it wouldn't have been a problem, with wanting a left back, because at the time when you look at the health, it was not the most crushing thing to want, because Spence can play there, Gray can play there, Ben Davis can play there, and so we had enough to hold off the charge to go out there and put your energy in getting a left back or a left full back. We needed a right back, and so in that case, if you now say, hey, let me go and me get a full fullback, then you know, well, you're going to keep Spence there because we want to move Spence to the right. That's what's supposed to happen in the long run. But in the short term, if we're planning that way, then when we come into January, they would have gone out and get a left fullback right away and move Spence over to the right. But we did not do that. We have not done that, and it's a 22nd day in the window. So nothing that's happening is coming together. So we still have Porro playing minutes after minutes after minutes, game after game after game in all competition. Bless him that he's always there, as much as he takes a lot of flack for his defense. But the man is healthy and is always there, and you have to give him some props for that. But just talking about the back room, just talking about what was supposed to be happening, we don't see that. We don't see where we look like we had a plan for the window. We don't look like we have a plan for what our needs are. Now we have injuries on top of injuries, and this is not just the first time. I'm talking about the medical staff and the PR part of it, and how the club actually treat the fan. That's a total different show to go back and look at. But the promise that we were going to go into this window with Daniel Levy gone, and we're going to do things different, and we're going to go out there and support the manager. We have not done that after 22 days. We haven't come close to doing that. And so what are we left with? We left with Kolo Muani, not knowing whether it's going or coming. We could have looked at Kolo Muani and said, no, what, he's not cutting it, send him back. Maybe we sign a 1-year loan with him. But the fact of the matter is that he could have sat there until he gets bedded in, but we just didn't have enough to make sure that and plus the injury did not help and all of that stuff. But I'm not making excuses for Moani. The overall picture is that we have a transfer window that we have not used to our benefit to change or add to the complexion of the team, which is a poor reflection of us as a club. I can tell you that I can take an explanation from Lange or Vinay or Charrington or anyone in the back office. And what is more important to me as a football person, I don't see where the scouting department is producing. I don't look at a player and say, well, that's a player that they go and they unearth from somewhere. That's a player that you can find there. All the names are household names that are linked with Spurs. You don't need household names when you're trying to build up a squad. When you go out there and you get your quote unquote stars already, you have Kudus. That means you don't need another star next to Kudus. You need a winger, so you go out there and you go find a big time left winger, and then you have your star winger on the other side. It's not about trying Javi Simons over there or trying Spence or trying somebody. But I think what really happened with that is that they were looking at the long term that Tell and Odebeer was going to be able to fulfill the role of the left wing position, and maybe Frank never stick with it long enough. So I could put some of that on Frank, stick with it long enough to figure out who was going to take the jersey on the left side. Now that we see the injuries setting in and things start to peter out, then you don't have a choice but to let somebody own the jersey. And so we can look at it as, I don't want to say a blessing in disguise, because I don't want to have this episode of injuries after every game, but it's working to the point now where people are beginning to say, Frank is working better with less. And that should not be so. I don't think it is so. I just think that when you don't have a lot to deal with at the time, you can sit down and plan and do exactly what you're doing. You're seeing players now who are going to be there for the long haul because you don't have a choice. So sometimes those things can force you into doing things that you would otherwise have done. But it's not a good outlook when you talk about what should have been happening behind the scenes. You could have gone out and get a few veterans to fill in the midfield to teach these youngsters. Palinia that we're looking forward to. And then what happened to Spurs, we claim that we want to play this brand of football. This is our type of football. But if we don't have the players to play this type of football, we have to take it slow. I think it's my grandmother. Somebody used to say that you have to take what you can get until you can get what you really want. And I know Spurs fans don't adhere to that kind of philosophical way of going about things. We want it now, and we want it now. And now is the time that we should get it. We want to compare ourselves and say, look at Brighton, look at Brentford, look at Bournemouth. Bournemouth and Brighton and Palace, they all have patience. They all have coach coaches that are patient, and they also have lower expectation than Spurs do. And therefore, when it comes to who we're going to bring in, we have to bring in players of a higher caliber. We are not going to take, for example, sit around and wait for Gray to develop. We want it now. We're not going to sit around and wait for Bergvall to develop. We are forced to do that. But generally, when you look at Sarr and Gray and Matistel and Odebeer and the young kid Byfield and Luca Williams, when you put those players, or if you put them in a different club like Brentford and Brighton and Fulham, they are going to get their time to develop. Not so much when it comes to Spurs, because our expectations and where we are supposed to be and the caliber of player that they're supposed to be playing behind to make them better and grow and develop, we don't have that right now, and we don't have the patience to wait on those players to get to that point. So what we are actually doing, which is a disservice to the youngsters, that we're asking them to produce when they're supposed to be learning. One person said after the game, and Byfield came on and played, and this is our mindset, and I'm using this example because this is the mindset across the Spurs fanfare or our fandom. Byfield came on, and when he came on, Parr moved into the midfield. Smart move by Frank. Right? So Byfield is playing as a right fullback. When he came on, he looked at the situation of the game, right? And what the game dictates was that I want a fullback to come in. I need to fix my midfield because I know I've injured to Bergvall and Gray was running out of steam. So therefore, I'm going to use an engine like Porro and put Porro in there. Just painting a picture for you and show you how our fan base think. Byfield came on, and what he did was that he played very, very well as a defender, as a fullback. Right? And so his job when he came on was to make sure that we still come away with a clean sheet. And therefore his only job was to play defense. On my post, I think on my Facebook post, someone said, Byfield, I was disappointed that Byfield was not going forward and going on the overlap. And I say, hold on, wait a minute. Hold on and wait a minute here. You have seen Byfield play for the first time, maybe because most of these people who are talking are busy watching watch along and only watch Spurs. And so they don't know what's happening in the rest of football. But when they only sometimes know of players when they are linked, to whom they watch on YouTube. And the answer to Byfield was that Byfield was not overlapping and providing width. He did not go on for that. That was not his charge. That was not his responsibility. His responsibility was to go there and play defense to make sure that the winger did not get by him or cut loose and putting crosses in. And he did a very good job of doing that. That's it. There was nothing else that Byfield needed to do. The problem with that is that Byfield could have run, the length of the pitch and crashed something in the back of the goal, and everybody would say, whoa, what a generational talent. And what could have happened with him being upfield trying to do that is that he turned the ball over and it ended up in the back of our net. Right? That was not his responsibility to go provide width and whatever else, you're saying that he's supposed to do. And this is our mindset. I use that example because we don't actually know much about football, but we have a lot to say about football. And that example is the example that I come across a lot, on YouTube and Facebook. I want to do YouTube and Facebook. I came across a lot. Byfield was not providing the width and he was not overlapping enough. You tell me that person have an inkling of what of a football tactics or strategy. Like I said, he could have gone up and scored a worldie, but and how will that have affected the outcome of the game? It would not have outcome because we kept a blank sheet. But if he let his winger go by him and a ball end up in the back of our net, we will be scoring to make sure that we hold on to the other goal. So keeping a clean sheet was his charge. Not going up there and trying to prove that you can go forward or you have attack in your boots. That wasn't his charge at all. I spent enough time on that piece already. But I'm just trying to show you the mindset of how we think about football. So therefore, when I said that, it was to make the point that do we have the patience to wait if we decided that we're going to build slowly? We don't. And let's not pretend that we would have waited on Areola. Let's not pretend that we would have waited on Glasner. Let's not pretend that we would have waited on Andrew Phillips. Let's not pretend that we want to be like how Brighton plays. Let's not pretend that we can buy like Brighton and sell like Brighton and still be a club that expected to be in the top 6. Brighton doesn't finish in the top 6. Brighton doesn't play in Europe. Brentford doesn't. Not because they're finishing ahead of Spurs, it doesn't mean that they're going to be in the top 6 or the top 4. They're playing well and doing well. And I notice that every time they do well, every time they get a result, oh, we should be like Brighton. Oh, we should be like Bournemouth. But then when you look at the table at the end of the year, they're finishing 9th and 10th and 13th and 15th. How are you going to be like them if they're not finishing in the European, or they're not expected? They're playing good football, they're recruiting, they're doing everything that you're supposed to do as a club. But on the sheet, when you look at the end of the day, they're finishing as mid-table. You can't, there's something that's missing there, because Brighton sell their players every year and a half. Brighton goes out there, and I'm going to finish right here because I'm getting too emotional with what I'm saying, is that when you look at it, right, I can give you 3 players just across the spectrum. I go from Brighton, who pays $4 million for Caicedo. I'm going to give you Mbomo, who Brentford pay $5 million for him. I'm going to go to McGinn, who Villa pay $2 million for him. So those are big established players who have come to the Premier League and have gone on to do great things, right? We are saying that Spurs are supposed to be like them, and why can't we be like them? But are we going to go out there and spend $4 million to a team that we doesn't know from wherever Caicedo comes from, and have the patience to develop him and sell him for 115 million in a pounds, and then give back the other club that sold him 20% of that? That's how Brighton do their business. So when Brighton goes out there and find players for 15 and 16 million dollars and develop them and sell them like the McAllisters and the Trossards and whoever else they're going to sell, they're giving back 20% of the sale. You think Spurs are going to be like that? So we have to make sure that when we start to talk about things we knew nothing about, right, we be careful that we're not putting stuff out there that are not true. You're not going to have the patience and the time and the expectation that we have to develop these players, but we want to use them as examples. When Ipswich was up, someone said, look at Ipswich. Oh, we should be recruiting and buying and do everything. Now we are supposed to be like, recruiting and buying and playing like Sunderland. Every time that a club shows a promise, Spurs are supposed to be like them. Why can't Spurs be like them? But at the end of the day, we are Spurs, and we should act like a big club. We should behave like a big club, recruit like a big club, and then all those things should go away. We should not have won a tournament or a cup last year, and we are nobody this year. We're supposed to be able to kick on from that and put some respectability to where we're supposed to be as a big club. We are supposed to be in the upper echelon of English football and then European football as a club. We have a wide fan base. I'm in the United States, and I know the passion is still here, being miles away from the action. But nevertheless, we need direction, and from the back room, we are not getting that direction, and that needs to get fixed. Peace. I'm out of here. I'm DJ Paul for Tottenham Hotspur USA, and as always, be good, walk good until next time, and come on, you Spurs.